go.
Please. Okay.
Okay, good morning. Today is February the 6th, 2012. This is our Monday work session. Present are Jana Creighton. I'm the vice chair of the board, Pete Ferguson. Our counterpart, Tom Burnaby, is absent today. He's ill. Also with us is Mike Hankey and our auditor, Alan Harold. The purpose of today's work session is to talk a little bit further about the budget. We're still working our way through this, and we're very grateful, Auditor, that you and our administrator, Mike Hankey, have been working together, trying to find some alternative funding sources, and just to kind of keep us on track. Would you mind going over them?
Let Mike go ahead, if you will. If you'll notice in the draft of the budget, and it is a draft, obviously, because it still shows a deficit. In front of you, you can see the requests from 2011 and a proposal that we have that would fund most of the criminal justice administrative services departments with a 10% reduction from last year, and the other administrative departments at a 20% approximately reduction from last year. I'll go down line by line with you so that you can see what we have. You'll notice the first department, of course, is the Commissioner's Department, and in the 2011 general fund budget was $664,014, and with the 23% cut, which was our original thought, 23.1% cut, we were requesting $510,466. On this proposal, we're showing a 20% cut, which would be down to $531,211, or a reduction of $132,000 plus. You'll see the auditor in a similar fashion at 23%. It was $835,646. At 20, it's $869,333, which is a 20% cut. And you can see that down through the first criminal justice and administrative service department, which would be the prosecutor's department, in 2011 funded at $2,937,064. That's general fund, part of this budget. His request was for the same amount of money. We are proposing to cut that department 10% to $2,643,358, or a cut of $293,706. You see the clerk of courts similarly at 10%, the coroner similarly at 10%, even though, for example, the clerk of courts came in at 23% on her requested cut. We are proposing funding those criminal justice and administrative services departments at a 10% cut. The same with the coroner, who came in at 14%, funding at a 10% reduction. Sheriff is what it is, as we know, that we're trying to keep or reopen beds in the jail. Recorder 20%, microphone 20%. Court of Appeals is zero, and there's a reason for that, as you all know. None of their personnel funding comes from us, and it's their funding only is for things like purchase services, and they turn around and pay back to us approximately $60,000, maybe $65,000 in rent for their space, so it's minimal. Common Pleas Court, which came in at 10.06%, we're saying 10%. Family Court, which graciously came in at 25.79% cut. And remember, these requests were made at our request of reducing 23.1%. And you'll notice Family Court, who I singled out the other day, and I will again today, came in at 25.79%. We are saying, no, let's see if we can do it at 10%, the same as the other criminal justice administrative services. Same with probate, and of course their adjunct area in the mental illness area, et cetera, et cetera. All of this comes down to a total that currently sits at $48,847,000 $584. Our current revenue estimate, as you know, is $47,911,187. And so we sit on this draft, and I emphasize this is a draft, pass-through on the budget, we sit at $936,397 in deficit. As I stated the other day at the meeting, we will not present to this board a final budget that is in deficit. In fact, the law says that we cannot pass a budget in deficit, and it is in the end math. I have to tell you that for the first time in my short time, I realize in the county, but the first time in my memory in the county, the auditor has worked very closely with me, the administrator, and on this budget, and I have extreme appreciation for that. He is a superior number cruncher to me. Perhaps his background helps him with that. We are together looking at both more cuts to recommend in this budget, which obviously will have to be done if we can only cut. It's the only way we can balance. That's what we will do, is cut this budget. But we're also trying to look at alternative revenue streams. And we're here today really to ask if we're moving in the direction the Board of Commissioners would like to have us move. Do you think that this attempt at more equal distribution of criminal justice and administrative services funds is a good idea? Do you think that an attempt at an equitable percentage of cuts with those exceptions of the sheriff, and as you know, the public defender, because if you cut them, you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. It costs more than we'd save. But if you think that is a fair and equitable progression toward the budget, which, as you know, we have until the end of March to finish, but our goal being to finish it by the end of February, if not sooner. And I'll stop there. Mr. Harold, is there anything you would like to add?
I welcome the commissioners' input.
Well, we all geared toward it. Thank you very much, Alan, for all the work that you and Mike put into this, the numbers, and we appreciate it. You know, our goal was to help the criminal justice system to reduce and try to get the jail back up to close as we can, the number of beds, sheriff deputies on the road, and help the prosecutor's office, et cetera. And, you know, this is a real good start, and I'd like to continue the way we've been going. You know, I think it's very fair. I really do. That we told the people in this county that this is a criminal justice thing. We want to keep people safe. I think we looked at these numbers and cut appropriately, in my opinion. And the others have to, you know, take that 20% cut, including the commissioner's office, until we see what happens in 2013. But I certainly appreciate the work that has been done on this, and we will continue looking at this thing. And you know, I appreciated so much the remark that Commissioner Creighton made the other day. He emphasized the fact that we can't afford to give any raises, and I don't think anybody in this has given any raises, and we certainly would stand by what you said, that we can't avoid that. We can't get that message out. It's not the right environment, as you said. But thank you. I appreciate it, and I would continue working on this.
I made notes as we went along, so I'm just going to kind of review my notes. First of all, it is a level playing field. That's the first thing that jumped out at me, especially in the case of the prosecutor and the family court, where I think there was a disparity before, quite frankly, that they now have been all made even, and that was the intent. I agree with Dr. Ferguson, that was the intent of the criminal justice tax. I would also propose the concern, I mean, that it does increase the deficit. It doesn't, it actually has increased the deficit, which raises a red flag, but you know, you work your way through that. So to that end, I would have two questions for the auditor. One would be, pretending I know nothing about the auditor's office.
Sure.
First of all, tell me a little bit about when you think you would even consider or review for an additional certificate.
I think within the next week or so.
And that would come from maybe other funds that are out there?
I think we
or-
consider to explore.
Okay,
you know,
additional
looking-
fund, okay.
Looking at any funds that may impact the general fund. I'd like just to leave it at that while I still do my homework.
Okay, but we do know, and that there are additional funding sources that possibly could come from other departments that we could encourage them to
Right.
use.
Right.
Okay.
I don't think, we wouldn't have gone down this path of presentation if, we didn't think that we could make it work.
We will balance it.
It will be balanced.
Commissioner, I appreciate the point on the level playing field because it's something that we worked hard to achieve.
Mhm.
That's really all I
Yeah.
have. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I'm still just thinking,
Sure.
I'm thinking.
So we hopefully that by the end of the month or shortly before that, that we can have this.
Right.
Okay, well, what would be our next step then? Would you identify areas of interest possibly, or?
I think that would be it. I think before we amend the certificate that we would come back, my office would come back to you to say this is where, these are some changes to our projections, and kind of let you guys weigh in
Okay.
on if you think it's appropriate to make those changes. So I think we'd be coming back to you within the next week or so.
And meanwhile, I'll be combing these funds for how we can cut to make it, because if nothing else occurs, if there are no other alternate methods, then cut it and make it work.
If there are no additional.
Right.
If we can't find,
And I feel at an unfair advantage because I do know the answer to some of these things that I'm asking you, but I'm saying them for sake of discussion.
Sure.
Is that it is appropriate for those that have outside sources to pay them into the general fund.
there are additional funds, much as we looked at with the real estate tax overpayment and the property, personal property tax overpayment. And again, we have not moved those funds into the certificate yet. We have made some budget assumptions that those numbers will be. So we continue to work through our final math on, what dollars we'll bring in from those specific funds. And additionally, there are potentially other funds where statutorily any excess is to come back to the general fund. And those are we focus on all those.
Okay. But Mike, to your point then, should there, maybe there doesn't need to be another column, but if the request were actually a shortfall of $504,000, somewhere along the line, if we did not have additional revenue sources, then we would have to then pare that line once again.
That's correct. And whether it would be paired over in the request area or actually applied and paired over in the far right column, it would be the question. And I would lean toward looking at spreading that across the far right column. Our proposal of currently 20 and 10% would be increased in, not necessarily across the board, but increased in those areas.
I'll be back up to maybe 23.
Well, 23 for those non-judicial departments or maybe greater, and also perhaps in the judicial areas. Criminal, I don't mean judicial, but criminal and administrative justice areas. So we'll see. Just wanted to keep you updated, however, on where the direction that we're taking, and give you the chance to put the stoplight up if you want it. allow us to move forward in the general area that we are.
It would just need to be reminded, though, to all officials that if indeed there are additional funding sources, that it is usually a one-time shot. I mean, it's, you know, it's not something that you, at least in my memory, that you can accumulate. And also understanding real estate assessment is one that you don't pay into the general fund.
Right,
That is distributed back to the subdivisions.
Right.
So, I mean, there are certain hurdles, I guess I would say, or certain conditions that
Right.
you cannot pay in.
Right, and I think one of the things we look to, much as with the real estate overpayment fund, is that these need to be reconciled more often. These funds, the real estate fund overpayment fund has not been reconciled in a few years for whatever reason. So the point is not to build it up to help us in this rainy day as much as it helps, but for us to make a fair assessment every year of what amount of money can come back to the general fund to help the certificate on an annual basis. That's what our intention going forward would be. So.
And remind me, is there a percentage of the real estate, I know it's 5 years, is that, is it a year or is it a percentage?
It's on a yearly basis that we look at.
Okay.
And even from that, we make the determination of, is there dollars that have been out there for 5 years that we should still reserve for a period of time, because if we move everything over 5 years to the general fund, and somebody comes back and makes a claim, then the general fund is obligated to pay it. And I think there's money in the budget for that, because it traditionally happens, so we would look to perhaps soften that, and the point is to be a little more methodical about the way that we look at these accounts every year.
So it's a rolling 5 years with those exceptions that you just mentioned, instead of a roller coaster.
Right. No, that's the way that's my personal style.
That makes sense, so you have a more even application of your revenue.
And with the phase out of personal property tax funds, that
At some point,
will go flat.
Correct.
Correct.
At some point, again, 2012 is if you think back, it was certainly in the phase, dollars that would be available to come back to the general fund are starting to get into the phase out period, where you're in the 80%, 60% years. So the dollars were diminishing anyhow because of how that was phased out. So when you look into 2013 and 14, it will become less, because it was 7 or 8 or 8 and 9, there was only 40% of what you paid and then 20% of what you paid. We're actually going into those funds by 10. It was completely phased out. So.
Other discussion, comments? All right, well, with that, thank you very much. You'll keep us updated, and you'll let us know when we need to have our next work session.
We will,
on this.
and I hope it's quickly.
Okay, thank you.
If nothing else, we look forward to being with you to talk
thank
about
you.
this next week,
Yeah.
more finances
Great.
next Tuesday. At our first,
Yes, first.
our first auditor treasurer.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
next
and
Tuesday.
I just had the fund balances sat on my desk this morning, so you can see to prepare for
Right.
that Tuesday is a little tough. So